I don't know what it is about that sound, that profane bloom, that is just so perfect, but I could listen to that for hours. It's amazing. It makes it completely worth playing this character. So this one is a Death's Oath Occultist, and we are also using a 6-link Bane as well. I'm really not one for like the super passive playstyles, so like this and Righteous Fire, not really my first pick, the walking simulator builds. But I figured with Bane we could kind of make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more safe. Before we get into the skills and the items and all that real quick, I just want to say thank you to everybody. I'm blown away by how many views and comments I've been getting on these, and I'm going to be honest, this is like the driest league, I think, for me personally, and I've been playing pretty hardcore for like three years now, and this has been overall the most boring league. But since I started doing these, I don't think I've ever been like this into PoE. Like, I'm having trouble falling asleep because I'm trying to think up new builds to do. So I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and seriously thank all of you for the comments and everything. And again, if you've got criticisms, if you have build suggestions, questions, anything, put them in the comments or catch me on Reddit. I'm posting these there too in the Path of Exile builds subreddit, so I'm pretty active there as well. Just like the other builds, this one will be a 1x budget. However, in the POB I will include a more expensive version, or rather stats you want to look for when you're trying to upgrade. They are not cheap. Just like bleed damage over time multipliers and physical damage over time multipliers, the chaos ones do not come cheap, but they will be in the POB. So if you're, if you have a really bad ring and you want to upgrade your ring and you've got a little bit more currency, I'll show you which stats to go for first. My personal opinion on it though, this build is really fun for mapping, don't get me wrong. I don't see it ever really being worth it going all in on the Death's Oath. I actually saw a guy was posting earlier today about his Death's Oath, and the damage was about 3 times what this one is, except he had spent something like 50 or 60 exalts on his gear. And while we're talking about currency, here is what I got again from 70 to 90. Had I not gotten those 2 exalts, I would have gotten screwed. It's only about 600 chaos. So this character was pretty low compared to the other ones, except for the fact that I got 2 exalts. All right, let's get the Ascendancy out of the way so I don't forget about it this time. So first off, Profane Bloom. The reason I do this, not only because I like the way it sounds, but it's amazing for leveling. And at 24, you'll want to swap to Bane, which will apply your curse anyway. So you'll walk up, drop a curse on a pack, and it'll just explode. Second, get Void Beacon. And then third will be Withering Presence. Now, you can skip this and get Malediction first if you want. But if you're rushing to use Death's Oath, since it is chaos damage, you pretty much have to take this first for the chaos resistance. But if you want to wait a little bit, you can do Malediction. If you're doing Death's Oath first, do Withering Presence. On the topic of leveling, until you can use Cain, this is what you'll be using, is 2 of these wands. So you can either buy them, they're probably like 1 or 2 chaos, or if you are a hoarder like I am and you have a bunch of quality gems, you can do the recipe. So what the recipe is, and this is applicable to cold, lightning, fire as well. So it needs to have a matching tag. So for instance, chaos. So you can see at the top, it's got a chaos. So the quality of the gems has to be 40. So if I were to use this, I would need 6 of these. And then you vendor those with a wand and it will return back 1 of these. So let's go over a broad view of the build real quick, just so you know what it's about. So again, Death's Oath. So what this does is it is a chaos damage per second aura around you. And if you kill anything for 3 seconds, you're then taking 450 chaos damage per second. So to combat that, you can either go Chaos Inoculation, which makes you immune to it, or we can get max Chaos Res. So you can see we've got 76 Chaos Res. We've got 400 regen, which is respectable. I mean, it's not a ton, but it's not nothing. We are immune to stun, and then we got some decent block. So essentially with the Death's Oath and then Bane, which is a ground target, damage over time. The playstyle is just run. You know, dot stuff and run. And with Bane, we'll apply 3 curses that'll slow and make everything weaker. So it's pretty tanky. All right, let's get right into it. We'll start with the weapon here. So we're using Cane of Unraveling mainly because it's just perfect. We got chaos damage over time, chaos damage, level to all chaos spell skill gems, which is great because that's like every curse. The power charges don't really matter because we're not crit. So a 6 link of these is about 30 chaos. I will say coloring it made me want to destroy the build. I think I spent 2.5 exalts trying to get these colors. So that being said, in the POB notes, I will put a link to a search to find one of these. It is recommended if you can't get one that has usable colors, just get a 5 link because the 5 link of the perfect colors is like 2 chaos and it will last you well into red maps. I didn't even have my Uber Lab until I was like level 87, so I couldn't even double curse. So the 6th link really didn't even matter. But yes, coloring this was a pain in the ass. So use that link I provided and try and get yourself one. If you see a 6 link with the perfect colors for under 50C, just buy it. You'll thank yourself later. Of course, for our chest, we got Death's Oath. Life and stats is all we care about. None of the other rolls matter except for the implicit, but you can always re-roll that. So these are 1 chaos. They're super cheap and they do not need to be linked. So since the skill is granted by the item, it does not need to be linked. So don't freak out about that. These are the ideal colors and they can be kind of tricky. So I'll leave a search link in the notes for this as well. If you can't get these colors for super cheap, just make sure that there isn't 3 green or 3 red. If there's 3 blue, you can kind of work with that. But as far as supports that matter, you don't want more than 2 red or 2 green on that. All right, next we got Helm, which we'll be using Crown of the Inward Eye. I just like this Helm. You can see it gives a lot of life, a lot of mana, a lot of energy shield. We don't really care about the energy shield and mana. However, these transfigurations you can see apply any tree increases to energy shield and mana to damage for us. So we don't get a lot of it on the tree, but it's still something. And then the other reason is they're super cheap. And I actually didn't even realize this implicit was on Helms. So this helps us a lot because we are constantly degenning from Death's Oath. So I'll leave a link to those so you don't even have to worry about searching them. There's a ton of them up right now for 5 chaos. So again, it's not like a huge amount of regen, but every little bit adds up. So I would definitely try to get one of those. We'll do jewelry next, kind of as a whole. So just like my other videos, because these are budget, jewelry is not going to be a wow factor. It's going to be a lot of life and a lot of resist where you can get it. So this one, the anoint was already on there. I didn't even worry about anointing. But you can see it's got life, chaos, resistance, and spell damage. So make sure you get chaos resistance at least like 40% between your jewelry because we get a little bit on the tree. But you want to be over at least 50 chaos resistance total. Otherwise, that degen is really, really going to hurt. So big life or medium life in this case. Spell damage is a bonus, but not necessary. And then you can see rings, as much life and as much resistance as possible. You want big resist on these rings because we're using 3 uniques. And belt and helm is usually a pretty big source, or rather a cheap source of getting a lot of resist, which we will not have on this build. Okay, we'll do gloves and boots next here. So gloves, nothing special, a lot of life, a lot of resist, nothing to it. If you start looking for more expensive pieces, probably the cheapest of the upgrades is going to be a set of Elder Gloves. with chaos damage over time multiplier, but we're not going to worry about it. Again, this is a 1x budget. So boots, life, resist, and strength. I just saw this pair. It had strength. That's more life. So why not? And also, it should not be an issue, but Death's Oath does require 180 strength, but with the pathing we take, you shouldn't have trouble hitting that. If you do, you can always anoint beef, just until you until you get to the point where you don't need it. Lastly, for the gear, we'll do the belt. So I don't know if this is a good choice or not. I personally love this belt. And because we get a lot of stats from Death's Oath and the way we're pathing, we actually have a lot of raw stats. So you can see we got 490 intelligence, 337 strength, 225 dexterity. So this belt has a lot of lives on it. Lives. We're not Mario. We don't have lives. We have life. There's a lot of life on it. And then it has increased attributes as well. So the nice thing about this too is our strength is higher than dexterity, so we can be ignited, and intelligence is higher than the strength, so we can't be shocked. And then we also get like 45% increased damage from our dex. So it's actually a very, very good belt because we have so many stats. If our stats weren't so high, it probably wouldn't be worth it. I actually was running Ascendancy in my next slot for a while, but Rare kind of beat it out. But very, very solid belt, in my opinion. So for flasks, we'll go through these real quick. I hate that I'm running this, but we kind of have no choice. So you'll notice a lot in the more expensive Death's Oath build, they all have a lot of recovery on kill through cluster jewels. So those are pretty expensive, and again, budget. So since we're life-based, there's only 2 options of getting health back from spell damage. One is chaos damage leeches life on an amulet, which, I mean, there was one amulet that was actually very, very good for like 10 chaos, but I figured if I buy it, nobody else is going to have one, so I'm going to roll without it. If we were like a CI build with energy shield, there's all sorts of different ways we could get leech, but this is the cheapest way to solve the issue. It's not good. It gives us no damage. However, if you're low on chaos resistance, it also shores up on that and will help you. So defensively, it's really good. Quartz flask, you guys should know by now. Phasing, get phasing. Phasing, always have phasing. Quicksilver with warding. This is where the flask setup gets kind of iffy because we can't get all the rolls that we want. I hate curses, so I have to have a curse flask. Obviously, you have to have a freeze, so put that on one of these. It just sucks that we're kind of limited because we can't get like a really good Quicksilver flask for even more run speed, but it's fine. And then finally, Corrupted Blood. If you get a Corrupted Blood Jewel, you can drop this and pick up a flask that actually matters. Ideally, you would want a Cinder Swallow flask because that thing is amazing for this build because you're just constantly refilling your life with all the recovery on kill. But again, we don't spend money here. So let's talk about some links. We'll start with Bane here. So if you never used Bane before, it's just a area of effects, damage over time. However, it's kind of unique in that it applies any linked curses, and then it also gains damage based off curses linked to it. So there is a breakpoint. I think after 2 curses, it's actually a damage loss if you keep adding curses compared to like a standard support gem. But this will be your single target, and if there's any rares that are high HP or anything, this is what you're going to cast on them. It's also if it's not safe to get in melee range, just throw Bane on them. So this will be linked with Enfeeble, which is a curse that makes everything do less damage, so that's great for us. And also Temporal Change, which slows everything down, and then will extend durations of debuffs on them. So it actually makes your curses last longer. The actual support gems will be Efficacy, Swift Affliction, and Controlled Destruction. Those 3 are bread and butter for pretty much any damage over time skill. And real quick in regards to curses. So we're Occultist, so we get 1 extra there. And then we are taking Whispers of Doom here, so we can cast 3 total. So this is what I was saying earlier. If you can only get a 5 link of the staff, it's not a big deal because we're running 1 curse as an aura. So you're still going to get the 2 on anything that's nearby. But if you've got 2 in your staff, it'll apply those until you get close, and then it'll start kind of overriding and everything. So speaking of that aura, and our gloves here, and again, gloves, helm, boots, it's all interchangeable. I usually just go off what's easier to color, but these are all kind of weird bases, so it didn't really matter. So we've got Blasphemy support with Despair. So this is personal preference. I see a lot of people actually running like Enfeeble or Tempt Chains in their Blasphemy so that anything that gets close to them is then weakened or slowed. I chose to do Despair so that I could be lazier while clearing trash. Because then you get the damage over time debuff and the extra chaos damage. So, well, not the extra chaos because we're not hitting, but you still get the negative chaos resistance while you're running through the packs. Whereas if you had this in your staff, you would have to stop and cast. So basically, I just want to be lazy with, you know, the white and blue mobs and just run right through them, which is the whole point of the build. We've got Malevolence, obviously, because we're damage over time. And then Vitality, I just threw this in here because it's more regen and we had a little bit of mana to work with. Not required, but I would still recommend it. Next, we got our Death's Oath. So, again, doesn't need to be linked. There are very few skills that actually support this chest piece. I think there's only like 9 total. So, and these 6 actually give it damage. So, Swift Affliction gives it damage, Efficacy damage, Conk Effect damage, Less Duration damage, and since it's a permanent thing, the Less Duration does not matter. Void Manipulation, more damage, and then finally Life Tap support. And we will go over how to trigger this because even though we are degenning, we're not casting it ourselves. So we are actually not triggering Life Tap with the chest. We'll be triggering it with Flame Dash, which we will go over. All right, that was a long wait. I know you're dying to know how it works. So in our boots here, we got Flame Dash. We need a travel ability, obviously. So you want this as high level as you can for the cooldown recovery rate. Faster casting, not necessary. I just prefer it because that's less time we're locked down. And then this is where we've got our Life Tap. So you can see when we cast it, it gives us the Life Tap buff, which then lets us get the bonus damage on our Death's Oath. So that's really important that you've got that. Leave the Life Tap low level because you want it to go off every single time you Flame Dash. That way you're not like having to spend 3 Flame Dashes to get it to proc because then it won't be up all the time. And then finally, I just put Blood Rage in here for Frenzy Charges because it's a more damage multiplier, so why not? If you can't handle the degen, just take it out. It's not a single target boost, which is where our issues lie. We don't have a lot of single target damage, so it doesn't really matter for clearing, but I do it anyway. So we'll talk about the last links I've got, which have been wrong this entire time. So you can either run Blight Self-Cast or Wither Totems. I prefer Wither Totems because you're not locked down in place. So what should have been going on is Wither with Spell Totem, Multiple Totem, and Faster Casting. Now, if you're looking in POB, that will not give you any damage because it is assuming that we have max stacks from this. Which, obviously, unless it's alive for 15 seconds straight, it's not going to have max stacks. So we just use the totem to get it up quicker. Even though our damage is not good single target, it's pretty bad. Bosses usually don't last longer than 15 seconds. Guardians, obviously. But then again, you're probably not standing directly on top of them to get this stacked. So either Wither Totems or a Self-Cast Blight would be your last link. It's personal preference. And that is build number 3 done. So if you haven't seen the other videos, they're all 1x budget builds and T16 viable. The other two have a lot more bossing potential. It's still very slow. This one, you'll raise your kids and they'll graduate high school before you kill the bosses. It's not worth it. But if you want to clear maps easily, have fun. I mean, legions are a joke. Delirious maps are a joke. It's a very smooth mapping character, and it's not a lot of effort put in. So if you want something where you can just like watch Netflix and kind of walk around and kill everything in like a T12, T13, this one's perfect. So, and that seems to be the consensus, is that like T2, T12 or 13 ultimatums are like the most time efficient unless you really have a super expensive build. So something like this would be super perfect for you. So this one went on a little bit longer than the other ones, but I'm trying to add a little bit more information that people have been asking for. The POB has more info in it as well. I've got those links for the shopping list and the notes, leveling trees, the leveling items, and then again, those kind of luxury items, I'll call them. They're, again, stupid expensive, but they're kind of there if you want to look at it. That being said, thank you again. I can't say that enough. And if you've got any ideas for what you want to see, leave it below. I think thinking of a raider next. We had somebody ask about that, so we'll see. Also, sometime this week, I'm going to start trying to stream and see how that goes. So I'll link my Twitch profile down below. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.